And when they walk into masjids, the immigrants that are there, or the children of immigrants, even despite being told that this man is a hafiz, who has mastered multiple recitations of the Quran, still put forward somebody who's South Asian or Arab because they can't pray behind a black person. I'm not talking about that guy either. I'm not talking about masjids that I visited where young brown and black men, African American and Latinos, find themselves playing outside on basketball courts built so that young men can play on them. And then elderly South Asian men come out of those masjids and say to them that there's too many of you here right now. If you don't leave, we're going to call the police. I'm not even talking about them. And you know why I don't want to talk about them? Because very easily we can say, well, I don't do things like that. And then not acknowledge the things that we do. Simple things. Like speaking in languages that not everyone understands while they're there. Serving food that is only of our culture. Playing music on holidays that we only resonate with. Sitting in groups where we all talk to each other, but we're leaving people out. Literally, you see groups of people of one culture sitting in a space, and the one black person is sitting on their own. I had a sister who came to see me early on in my career. Her father was Muslim, in her own words, and he apostated. She said, my mother was not Muslim. When I got old enough, I decided to embrace Islam. I felt so excited because I grew up in a home that was broken, but all I heard was this Muslim brotherhood, this Muslim sisterhood. She said, I went to the local masjid in my community during Ramadan, and I was so excited. That people just didn't talk to me. I would give salams, no one would return my salam. Sometimes I would try to interject myself into a conversation, and people would just stop and look at me, and then they'd start talking to each other again. Everybody seemingly got invited to somebody's house for iftar, but nobody invited me ever, and I had to just eat on my own. She said, I never felt so ugly in my life. Whenever I looked into the mirror, I hated what I saw. She said as a woman, it was tough because when I tried to even speak to brothers, none of them would return my salams. When they would see me, they would just stare profusely at the ground. Some of them would literally turn their backs on me. She said the ugliness just built itself up even more and more. She said I got to a point where I just hated myself. How ugly must I be that nobody wants to even talk to me, that this religion that espouses such a sense of brotherhood and sisterhood, it talks about unity, it talks about ummah in these ways. This is what happens when you're dealing with people who the questions they keep asking necessitate more answers because they can't deal with the reality that someone would actually be so inconsiderate. Until the only answer that they could give to themselves that gives them some type of satisfaction is, well, maybe there's something wrong with me. This is a young black woman. And as she's sitting with me, she said, I just got to a point where I couldn't see myself anymore, and unsuccessfully tried to kill myself multiple times. But even then, I realized when I couldn't do it, what would be the point? Nobody really cares about me anyway. I would be alone then too. She said, now I'm just waiting to die. That young woman has a right over all of us, just like so many others do. And the stupidity that we utilize to justify our own microaggressions and racisms, to validate the longevity of what? norms and practices that when we leave from this world, and may Allah grant us only the best in the world beyond this one, are not things that are going to really make a difference when we're there. You just got to start to think inside. You be the voice that brings people together. You be the reason that people have hope. You be the connector. You be the bridge builder. You think about people the way Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did in terms of their hearts, and not just the shells, in terms of their souls, and not just their bodies. And as others are exerting whatever perspectives they do, you create the counter perspective that then becomes the norm in our community, where others will be able to really understand the depth and beauty of this deen because of how you live it, and you don't undermine that in any way. If I can ever be helpful to any of you in anything, please feel free to reach out and let me know. It'd be an honor and a privilege to be able to help. If any of you are ever in New York, speaking on behalf of my sister Linda and myself, it'd be an honor to host you there and to do whatever it is that we could for you while you're there. As I said before, and I'll say again, that if this is the only time that we're meant to be together, I pray inshallah ta'ala Allah gathers us all together again in the best of places in the world beyond this one. Please keep us in your dua. You all will be in our dua. Inshallah ta'ala Allah gives to us only the best. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us and protect us. May He bless us with knowledge that benefits us. May He bless us with the tawfiq to understand and implement that knowledge into our daily lives. May He guide and bless us all. Wallahu ta'ala alam wa billahi tawfiq. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah, Imam Khalid. We're gonna, before I forget, one announcement I want me to make about voter registration. Emerge up a booth outside for voter registration. So please, if you haven't registered to vote already in this very important election cycle, please register outside. We're gonna have, I think it's so we have about 5 minutes for question and answers. I know all of you guys have index cards that were handed out for questions. If you have questions for our speakers today, please inshallah, I have the first question, and it's directed at both of you, and if you can or Imam Khalid, where did this journey of activism and service start for you? The question is, what moment in your life led you to pursue justice and activism? And the second part of this is, when you knew you wanted to address activism and justice, where did you start specifically? What first thing did you do as a stepping stone?
Thank you, Imam Khalid. Thank you, everyone. I'm so moved today, so I'm a bit overwhelmed. I mean, for me, it started, I'm Palestinian, so I grew up in a family where, being Palestinian meant that you were already part of a lineage of oppression, but also of resistance and resilience. But for me, my moment, I had two radicalizing moments, and I want us to own that word. Hold it, own it. Radical is a good word. The first one was obviously 9/11. I'm from New York, and I got to experience the state violence and targeting of Muslims in New York City. I watched fathers get picked up. I've watched men in our community literally disappear off the face of the earth. No phone calls to their families. They were targeted for things like name sharing, tracked by the government. I worked with mothers just weeks after 9/11, just trying to connect people with legal services. So that was the first radicalizing moment for me, where I was like, this just is not right. Like, if we don't protect our own community, no one will. But I was young, so I was kind of feeling like I was still engaging in some sort of respectability politics, like I was trying to work within the system. But the real radicalization moment for me was August 9th of 2014, which was the murder of Mike Brown. And that moment for me, living as an American in the United States of America, when a boy in our community can be shot on the streets of his community in the summer, for him to lay outside for 4.5 hours swimming in his blood, for us not to bring any services like EMT, not allowing anyone from his community to come and just touch and see if this boy's heart was still beating. And then to watch us pick him up and throw him in the back of an SUV like he was roadkill, like he was a bag of rocks on the street. I was radicalized, and my respectability politics went out the window, and I realized once and for all that no one's going to do for our community if we don't do for us. If we don't stand up, if we don't fight back, if we don't fight together. Those moments for me have shaped my character, and have made me understand the power of not asking for favors, and this idea of dignity and respect is something we should already have. And then my third radicalizing moment that took me over the edge was Tamir Rice. My son is Tamir. It's spelled the same, Tamir. My son's going to be 17 years old. And when I saw on Twitter, justice for Tamir, justice for Tamir, it was done. I was done. If when we allowed in our country for a 12-year-old boy to get shot in a park, and we went on with our lives, and no one has been held accountable for that, we, sisters and brothers in this room and outside of this room, need to be ashamed of ourselves. And that, I went up like levels, and Tamir Rice took me. There is no other level from where I am right now. I'm up here, all the way up here. There's no way for me to jump. And I'm in a moment right now where I'm ready to risk it all, risk my life if I have to not allow that to happen to any other child in our community and outside our community.
Yeah, on my end, I went to a prep school from the time I was in kindergarten until I was a senior, and we had a lot of diversity to a certain extent because there was many students who were there on scholarship and financial aid. And I think where it really hit me hard in terms of just how race and ethnicity and privilege function is that we had a young African-American student who's a good friend of mine. His name was Daoud Crooms. Grew up in a single-family home. He was just a really classy guy. He'd show up to school wearing a suit and a tie. He had a briefcase in his hand. He and I, ran track together. We played football together. He was my workout buddy. I know I don't look like I'm an athlete, but it's pretty good. Daoud, in our junior year, got caught cheating on a Spanish quiz, a vocab quiz. 5 words, a little sheet fell out of his hand. The Spanish teacher sent him to the principal kind of in a joking way. And then the next day we found out Daoud got expelled. The teacher was in tears. There was a young white student by the name of David who, when we were in middle school, had consistently utilized racial slurs against black kids, South Asians, found himself without any qualms. David's father donated the tennis courts to the school. And when we turned to the school administration to say, look at what this kid's doing, they said it's his first time, he's young, he doesn't get it. Around the same time now, when we were older, he went on a similar tirade. And I went back to the school administration, and I said, what are you going to do about him? And they said, well, he's just a nice boy, and we have to maybe have a conversation about this and really talk out what it is that we're feeling. I said, right now I'm feeling pretty pissed. You just threw out my friend Dawood because he's a young black man